In the last section, we started looking at all the different ways in which we can update records that have been saved to our database. So in total, 5 different ways using Mongoose alone. Definitely a lot of different ways of achieving an update. We start off by creating our update test file. And inside of here, we declared the first it block, which would be done by using the set and save methodology. So as we've seen with a couple console logs already, when we console log out a model, we can see in plain text all the different properties that exist on that model. Case in point, let's add in a console log right now inside of this it block to log out Joe. Let's just see what different properties Joe has. So I'll save the file, scroll all the way down, and okay, so it looks like he's got this __ v, whatever that might be. He's got a name property and the ID property. And we know that this ID, although it appears to kind of be like a string or something, we know that it's actually an object ID. So what's really important in here is we know that it has the property Joe. Inside of Mongoose, if we ever want to update a property that is existing on a record, we can use an instance method called set. So I'm going to call joe.set, and then I'm going to specify the property that I want to update. So I want to update the name property, and we'll say just totally arbitrarily that I want to update it to be Alex. So now let's console log Joe again. So I'll add in my console log. And now we can see that at first, Joe has a name of Joe, and then he gets an updated name of Alex. So set is used whenever we want to change one of the properties on an object or on a model instance. Just setting a property, however, does not reflect that to the database. So when we call set, no update is done. This is solely something that is done in memory for our model. I'm going to clear up the console logs here really quick. Okay, it looks good. If we actually want to persist these changes to our database, we will call the save method, the save one that we've been using throughout all the different tests. So we call save, and that will persist our record to the database. Save can be used after we have called set on some property. Okay, so like if we ever want to, as a single property, do like a couple updates over time and then eventually save it, perfect use case for this set and save methodology. So I set the name to Alex, and then I can call joe.save and then put in our expectations to make sure that this was actually reflected into our database. So previously, we were testing out the delete methodology. I'm going to flip over to the delete file real quick here. So here's delete. And with all these remove methodologies, we had said, okay, we'll remove it, and then we will attempt to find that record in our database, and then we're going to expect it to be null. With the update methodology, for actually writing the test, I think that maybe we need a little bit different approach. I think maybe we need to make sure that we are not only testing that there is not a record called Joe, we should also be testing that there is a record with a name of Alex. So we're going to do a little bit of a different expectation or assertion inside of here. Instead, I think that we will pull up the entire list of users that we have in our collection at this point. So we'll just find all the users we have, and then we will assert that there's only one user in there, because there only should be one Joe for every single test. And then we will also assert that that single user has a name of Alex. So I think that'll be our plan for assertions in here. We're going to need to collect the entire list of all the users in our collection, which means we will need to use the find method, which we've already seen when we were doing our read test before. So as we were using it before, we would call user.find on the model class, and then we passed in an object with all the different properties that we wanted to kind of filter by for the find. So inside of here, inside my then, we'll call user.find. And then the question becomes, well, what criteria do we want to pass in? If we want to fetch a list of all of the users in our collection, we can pass in an empty object. So if we pass in an empty object, that means I have no criteria for this find operation. Just give me everything that's in there. And so if all of our code is working properly, I would expect user.find with an empty object to return a single user with the name of Alex. Okay, so that's kind of my expectation, my belief of what should be happening here. Because we are returning another query right here, or another operation to the database, I can chain on another .then, which will with the list of all the different users that were found by that query, or that user.find. So inside of here, we can write all the different assertions that we might want to make. And sorry, I call this user, it should be users plural, just to be 100% accurate. A find operation will always return an array, and so I would really want this to be users to indicate, hey, there might be multiple in here. So I think that to make some reasonable assertions here on this list of users, first off, I really only expect there to be one user. Second off, I expect that user's name to be Alex. So we'll say assert users.length is 1. And then we'll assert that users at 0, so the very first user in there, will have a name of Alex. And then finally, we'll toss in our callback, and this time I'm not going to forget to reference my done inside of the it block as well. So there's my done. All right, let's give this a test. I'm going to save it and let's see what we get. All right, so 8 tests passing. Looks good. So the whole idea behind set and save is that we might want to update several different properties in different steps, and then only after making all those updates will we make the final save. This methodology right here for updating a record in this kind of piecemeal fashion is best when we want to update a couple of different properties, but we might want to do so in different steps. So in the context of like a web server kind of world, maybe we've got some incoming request and it wants to like set off a whole variety of different updates. And maybe the logic for figuring out how we want to update this thing might be a little bit complicated. So we might make a function that would be something like, function maybe update name, and that would take in our user model. And then maybe we'd have a function of maybe update email. And that would take in the user model as well. And then after calling both these things, so maybe we would call maybe update name with our user, and then maybe update email with user. We could then just go ahead and say, hey, you know what, whatever just happened, take those 2 changes that were made and save that to our database. So with this type of approach right here, we could have 2 different functions that maybe updated the email or name property. We don't know, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But just to be 100% safe, after both possible updates, we could then call save. So the benefit of this approach is we would have 2 separate functions with all the logic for just deciding whether or not we needed to update this one singular property. And then only after everything was done would we call save. This would be a lot better and preferable to maybe making the change inside of here and then calling save inside of this function as well. Because we could end up with calling save once in here and once in here as well, which would definitely be not ideal because we would be touching our database twice. Okay, so just a little bit of an example of where we might want to use this set and save methodology. So this is all pseudocode down here, so I'm just going to be sure to take that all out. And I think that we're good to go. So that's it for set and save. Let's continue in the next section and walk through the methodology of updating a model instance with the update function.